Okay, guys, how we doing? Sam here with you. It's what is Friday, the 27th of September. Of course, we're going to take a look at Bitcoin. So, some interesting developments since we last looked at it. I guess it's been exactly a week. So I thought we'd just get a big picture here, look at this, and talk about a few things before we get into some of the shorter term stuff or any proposed Elliott count that's on here. So I thought I would start here. This is Coinbase. I've got a 3-day chart. And I'm just wicking off all of the major pivots, right? So I've just got the lowest low that I'm just going back to 2015. Major pivots, right? So one, two, three, four. We really have 4 major pivots. Okay, let's focus just for a minute before we get into any of the triangle stuff. Let's just focus for a minute on what we can define, what we can say with certainty. Let me use this tool. Okay. So we can say with absolute certainty from the absolute low to our absolute high, and we have come down here, we are still in the midst of an internal retracement. Right? Until we break that low, right? This is an internal retracement. Just in the same way that swing high, swing low, that is an internal retracement relative to that swing. In the same way that this swing here, oops, what I want from this swing low to wherever we're going to pivot here, just an internal retracement. So let's be precise in our language here. So swing low, swing high, we are in the midst of an internal retracement. So a lot of people freaking out here. I think it's way too soon to, I mean, if anything, I would propose to you the market's giving us a gift here. We're beyond the idea that we had a triangle here that was going to break higher, right? That was influencing the Elliott count. So we're through that. One scenario gets eliminated. My preference was always that we were in a 2 here, right? So I think I've mentioned that when we've been looking at this for quite some time. My preference was always that we were in a 2 because the potential roadmap in terms of that count evolving, right, would be infinitely, well, much higher if this is 1, 2 rather than this was 3, 4 here, right? So that was always kind of what I was hoping for. It was hard to dispute the triangle as we were resting inside of it here, right? So you had to consider that as a possibility, but now we eliminate it. All right, so a couple of things. So I've had members ask me about this, and you can see this across crypto Twitter. People trying to make some assumptions about similarities here between these 2 triangles, and while they are two triangles and they have similarities, it wouldn't be the Elliott count slightly different. But I think we can extract some value from this. So my first thought is, so if we're just looking at it, just swing high to swing low, we're getting an expansion here in the same way that we're getting an expansion here. As soon as we're talking expansion, then I want to go to the wolf tool. So I'm going to go to the wolf 50 here. And I'm just going to take the height, the highest range of the triangle and try and get these as precisely as I can. All right. So here's the height of the triangle. We project down, and that's within ticks of 50% of the range of the triangle. All right. Okay, so that doesn't quite get there, right? And I've got that right on the tip, on the pivot. Doesn't quite get there, so a little bit of a perhaps, right? It's a front run of the expansion of the triangle, possibly, right? So duly noted here. I would take note of that. So let's just do the same thing over here. All right, height of the triangle. All right, here's the low of it. All right, here's my 50. Now note. If we were to come up, if we were to mimic this and do the exact same thing, it'd come up just shy of the 50, right? We think of it as a front run, perhaps. Well, what's sitting right there, right? There's the 233. Now, how has the 233 here on the 3-day and the Vegas wave in general been as an indication of where the trend is? I mean, look at this as we tag the Vegas wave. It's not until right here, when we break the 233, that we get the range expansion down, right? And we get the trend change. Now, look what happens here. As we get the contraction of the Vegas wave and we stutter before we break. Trend change. All right, in its simplest form, you can certainly, that's an easy way to quantify where we are in the trend. below the Vegas wave, or you could even be more. You could simplify even more. Below the 233 bearish, above the 233 bullish, right? Above the 233 bullish, below bearish. So over the history here on Coinbase, we've got this one small period where we were bearish, right? Really, that's it. Everything else is bullish. So before people freak out and start calling for 1800, I mean, before I even start to consider anything else other than just a simple internal retracement, I'm going to need to see a close. I'm going to see, just like here, I'm going to see a close below the 233. All right, just simple. Keep it simple. How about the fibs? This is an internal retracement, swing high to swing low. Well, we've looked at this many times. Let me get the measured move template up here so we know what happened there. It's an internal retracement right to the golden zone. Swing low to swing high. Right? We've been talking about this for quite some time. Let me take this off. Now we start to stack a few things here, right? So swing high, swing low. If we're coming down, we have the let me put it back on there. So let me get the my wool 50s here. Let me get this back on here so you can see where that lines up. So do you see here this blue line right here? If I kind of wiggle that, right? So get that right on there. Is literally we're just ticks from the 65 here. So we're getting a pretty solid base right down here. All right, if we're gonna draw in a baseline here of potential support. All right, so get that out of here. That's gonna clutter. But note also as well here the volume profile here. Now that is visible range, so that's including all of this activity here. But we're getting certainly there's a high volume node here, so you'd have potentially, right? Let's say it that way. Potentially substantial support here, and we're talking about the 65. Let's call it 6,900. The 618, at least here on Coinbase, 72 and change, 72.30. Let's call it the Vegas wave. All of this. So if the market is going to offer Bitcoin down here, before we get into any Elliott wave, it's a little bit, I think you got to make a decision here as to what you're doing in here. Why are you in the crypto space? Is it just because there's high volatility here, and we have, right, so in the 2017, right, it was everyone's going to get rich quick and Lambos and, all the shit that went with that. So, I mean, I think there's something more here than just, we've got a volatile asset, let's trade it, right? So, if you're a believer, and I would put myself in that camp, this is a financial revolution. So the opportunity to be a buyer here on a retracement, on just a simple retracement, if you're a believer, you're being given a gift here. In my view, right? My view, for what that's worth. Now, if you're a trader, and you're like, fuck the revolution, I don't give a shit. All I care about, I just want to make money. This is a volatile asset. I want to trade it. Okay, I can respect that just as well, right? You don't need to be a believer in here to come in and say, I've got volatility, right? I've got, some might argue with you about liquidity, market manipulation, some of the things that do happen in crypto, because it's still a relatively, we don't, well, in comparative context, we don't have all the safeguards and the maturity that we have in the other asset classes. How about we say it that way? Right? We certainly have a volatile asset, and we have a lot of interest. I suppose perhaps that's relative to whether you're in the crypto space or not. But if you're just a trader, which I'm not saying one's better than the other, right? So don't misunderstand what I'm saying. Just in terms of how you're going to approach the market here. If you're a believer, and we've just made an internal retracement to 50, so for me, I start buying at the 50, right? As I've said, I will continue to buy until we get all the way through here. So this is so put yourself in the camp of both a trader and a believer. Well, then you're in prime zone to be laddering in as it's coming down here. Now, I recognize, and I think somebody commented on this the other day. All right, so often I'll tell you guys, all right, the safest way to do this, right, as a trader, is to wait for the pivot, get the reaction, take the first retrace. Right? Now I would say that's true in trading 99.9% of the time, right? It's the more conservative approach. So look for the reaction. Don't just sit here with a limit order, right? I tell you guys that often. Now, there are exceptions to that, and I would tell you that Bitcoin is one of those rare exceptions. So we've had a few, right? So maybe an easy example would be if you were a early user of well, let's think of something easy. Amazon. Let's use Amazon, right? So now, right, it's just part of our daily experience, right? I mean, I'd rather buy shit on Amazon than anywhere else, right? I click and it's here tomorrow. Don't have to go to my car. Don't have to go in. Right now, it's just part of our experience. But if you were first looking at that, there were people that had the foresight to say, this is going to change the shopping experience. This is going to dramatically change the landscape of retail across the globe, right? And those people have been rewarded beyond their wildest expectations. I think there's a reasonable analogy here, potentially, right? So it's always right. It's just the potential that Bitcoin is a revolution in finance, right? Or you could even think blockchain, right? So let's be broader, but Bitcoin being the dominant cryptocurrency, obviously, right? So if you're a believer in crypto, hard not to be a believer in the long-term value of Bitcoin. So if you're approaching this with that mindset, as in, well, I'm a trader, but I'm also a believer, well, anywhere in this box, right, you are being given a gift. My view, right? So I know there are people saying it's going down. We're going to break this low. We're going to 5,000, right? I see the same stuff you guys do, right? But what do you see in the chart? What can we quantify, and why are you in here? Why are you trading in here? Right? Is it just about the money? Really? Given the backdrop of what's happening, let's just say, without getting political, but just shit that's happening. I mean, maybe the country, maybe the global financial system needs a revolution, right? As we sit with, I don't even know what the count is now in terms of number of countries that are offering negative interest rates. I mean, we're just in unique times. So if you're a trader and a believer, then you are right in the zone to where every time you get any significant retrace here, you're laddering, right? Now, there's got to be a point. No, of course, assuming you're trading without leverage, right? If you're trading without leverage, right, there's a point where you have to be out. Right? You can't take the drawdown. If you're not trading with leverage, then this is a reasonable place to just start that laddering process of accumulating, right? We're just simple. As long as we stay, you can think of it this way. As long as it stays above the 233, I've just got a great opportunity. Bitcoin's been put on sale. I mean, you could simplify it that way. So for me, this is right where I want to start buying. So even if you just split it in quarters, right? So you start at the 50, at each increment on the way down is an opportunity to ladder in. Now, again, you got to be responsible about doing that. I'm not saying, don't leverage up your mortgage to do it, but if you have the capital here, and remember, you don't have to put $20,000 in at every level. You buy $200 at every level. I mean, right? That's one of the beautiful things about it. You can buy on the way down here, and you can say, all right, I continue to buy until we break that 233. Then, what are you an investor? Are you a holder? What are you doing, right? Are you just going to take the stop? Right, I think I wanted to focus there just to start so that you're clear about what you're doing in here. What are you trying to accomplish here? If you're just trading it, that's one thing. If you're a believer, that's another. If you're both of those, as I am, perhaps that's another. So I think in its simplest format here, we're just in the buy zone, right? So we're just right where you would hope that it would be offered, right? So when it was holding in that triangle, I was sitting there going, damn it, man! I'm waiting for that 50. I'm waiting for that opportunity to get to be able to buy it in that range. There it is, right? Are you buying? Are you nervous? And again, not that one's better than the other. Are you waiting for the pivot? If I'm in here on a 3-day, we could have the pivot right now. Right now, we'll get into a little more detail as we go down to some shorter time frames. That perhaps we're there. Perhaps there's a little more resolution that's required here. So you could be waiting for something like that. You could wait until you get a motive wave and take the first retracement off that, right? It's just a question of how do you want to approach this? Because there is no one right way to respond to what's happening here. Again, simplest format. Swing high, swing low, internal retracement. We're between the 50 and the 618. How many times have I shown that to be a place that you would want to consider being a buyer? I mean, 2,000, 3,000. Now it's happening in Bitcoin on a 3-day chart. Just let's get some context here. All right. So all of that said, right? I don't mean to preach here, but this is not insignificant. Right. So I'm not saying that I am certain that we are not going to go down further. I'm just saying, as a trader and a believer, sitting in this range is an opportunity to think about long and hard as to whether or not you want to let that come and go. Right? Always safer, right, to wait for it. Right? Take the first retracement. I'm not saying that's not a bad way to go here. Right? Just be definitive about what you're doing. All right, how we say, okay, enough on that shit. I want 16 minutes on that. All right, so let's cover everything I wanted here. I think so. All right, let's go over to, let's look at the Elliott count. All right, so the basic assumption we have here of this count, essentially same idea, right? Swing low, swing high. We're just making an internal retracement. Now, from an Elliott perspective, this isn't the ideal 2 that you'd want to see. So let's go back here. So let me go to a daily here. Let me get some of this. Let's just remove everything. All right. So at its base level here, we can kind of look at this as that's simplifying it. Okay. So we get a swing high, right? We've got some sort of a 3-wave correction. I'm not saying we're done here. But at its simplest, right? If we just, like the simplest, right? You just read Elliott Wave principle and you're thinking, okay, I think I see what's going on there, right? There's a lot of chop in there. But out here on a daily, you can make that case that all we've done is just had a complex ABC. So let's get a measured move on that. Okay, so swing high, swing low. Now, the other thing to consider here is since we've got a low here of 3,200 and a high of 14,000, well, we certainly have the conditions that would warrant looking at this in log scale. Right, log scale, we're just sitting at the 38. So there's your simplified version, right? How simple can we make it? Boy, I really had something small there. Remember I had that. Okay, let's get intermediate. Okay, let's go to white. Okay, let's simplify if we can. All right, could we be going lower? Well, of course we could. Try to get that. Yeah, sure. Right here. Now we're getting down here, so come out of log scale. We're getting, if we're going there, we're going beyond the 6 or the golden zone here. So, that's why I want to look at them in both. But right, I think we can stay here and just the basic shape of this. I've got some sort of a 3-wave correction that's correcting this giant impulse. Okay, way too soon to be hitting the panic button. Really got I'm people freaking out, right? This is what we were waiting for, right? We waited through all of this. Maybe, let's hope, maybe we'll get the 50. Maybe, right? Which was the problem when it looked like we were gonna come out of here like this. That's not what I wanted, right? I wanted the 50, or between the 50 and the 618. I wanted the 2, not the 4. Here it is. Right, we got it, right? You waited all this time. Now, how are you responding? Right, now that's, again, I'm not trying to say one is right, one is wrong, but definitely bells should be going off here. If you're a trader, this is something to be paying attention to. All right, let me stop preaching here. Let's get this off here. Now, actually, I'm going to leave this trend line on. And the reason I do that, because this is very, 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 very common for the market to have broken such a substantial trend line to come down. And then if we're going to go back up at some point, right, if I extend this out, at some point, there is likely to be a retest there. Right, so if there's a retest, that's going to take they take a couple of tries to get through. Right, that's going to be stiff resistance on the way back up. All right, well, we'll get there in a minute. Okay, so I wanted to emphasize that. So one thought, you could just kind of, you'd leave it on here and then just hide it, right? So you know, right? Shit, I mean, it's easy enough to just draw it. So just don't forget about that. All right, so let's look at our count here. Now, I'm back and forth with a couple of my senseis today, guys that are really, Elliott experts. I was with Sensei Tudum, who members, he's been posting up some great content, a whole new series on Elliott trading and probabilities. He's my level 2 Elliottian, and he and I went back and forth with this. And at the end of the day, there's not a perfect count. There is no count here that's without some sort of an accommodation, right? So if the X here potentially would be, depending on how you're counting this, because you could count that A as a zigzag, or you could count this as a zigzag, or you could count it as a 3, or if you're thinking of a flat, it's too shallow, right? There's a couple of issues here if you were looking for a perfect Elliott count that we don't get. It's either too shallow here or not far enough here. There's a couple of issues with it, but you've got to work with what you've got here. So based on that back and forth and the best case scenario, I think that this is the strongest case at this moment in time. So per that, it's not a lot. It's not a big change from in terms of the first part of this. So we are still just the first drive down. Here's the ABC. I'm going to go with the ABC into the X, and from here, I think we go A, B, and we're in the process of seeking the C of the Y to finish the second. Now, breaking that down a little bit. Here, I'm going to take this off just to clear up the chart. Okay, so this is the squirrely bit of it here, which I think we have to treat as a flat. So it's actually an expanded B wave here. So we have an expanded flat. But the very clear 3, right? This is unmistakable, right? And it's actually a zigzag. So that 3 is, we can't fudge anything there. So this is right, we've talked about this many times. This is the most difficult to get an accurate count on, right? This is, but at its core, I see that as a 3. So I think we've got to go A and then ABC here now, right? So it is technical, but it's short. So essentially what we get is a double top here. Well, not essentially, that's exactly what we get. So from the high, we go here, and we looked at this last week. So here we're between the 50 and the 618, right? Again, there's that sweet spot, exactly where we are now, right? So just, there it is again. Okay, so A, B, C into the B. So what are we looking for? We're looking for 5 to finish it. Now, can we be done here? I don't think we're done yet. Right? The count doesn't support it. So coming down here, it looks like, again, we have to go with an expanded B wave here. So it looks like we go A, B, C here. Because this, you can't get 3 out of that. I've been down to the 5-minute, can't do it. Right? So it's got to go A, B, C into the 2 here. So A, B, okay, right? The count in terms of what follows that supports it. All right, 1, 2, and I got 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks like maybe the 5 is in. Maybe there's a little more. Just a little right now. Right, we'll go ahead and put the 5 there. Now, would that make sense? Well, let's just use our tools and measure it. So length of the 1 projected from this 2. Get it right on there. Okay, well, we stuttered here for a little bit, right? And here we've come just shy of the 2618, which would be the extreme for the 3. So that's why I was not sure, the 5 could be a little more here in the 5 that would bring us down here to give us that third relative to the 1, 2. So that's a reasonable projection, but we could be done, right? It's just a little too soon to be making that call just yet. But we certainly have a contender, and we have all of the subdivision to support it. Well, the last bit is a little iffy, but the 1, 2, 3, 4, we're seeking the bottom here of the third. So 1, 2, 3. Now all we're looking for, again, same thing every time, always. We don't have that, right? So until we get a little more traction coming out of here, it's a little premature to be zeroing in on that. But if we got something like that, that is what we're looking for to finish this. Right, so reasonable spot to be putting it. Let's assume we can get the 38 here. Right? That could go higher. We've got some structure here that could be at play that's right at the 50. All right, that was our essentially that was our low. That was our W low. All right, so that's going to be guaranteed. That's resistance coming back up. So we could go higher. We could do 38 to the 50, put in the 4 there. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Right, it would be just textbook Elliott, right? So we get a target down here, and we can use a few other things. Now, I don't have this pivot, so it's a little premature to be making that projection, but if we did, we could, just a few things we could look and say, can we build a case for confluence here? Well, here would be the 1618, 175. If we pivot at the 38, now you'd have the 1618 here. See, I mean, nothing says we have to go down there. You got a few spots. This would essentially be a double bottom, 127. Here's the 1618. So I kind of like this zone right here. All right, so let's take that off. If we were going to get something along those lines, that would give us completion of this impulse to finish. Now we could put a channel on it. Again, I don't have that pivot. We don't know where that's going to go. It could easily be here, and the channel is going to get skinnier. Don't know yet, right? But that's what I'm looking for, is what can I draw into to get all this over here to give me structure. So I would want to see some geometry here that was accommodative to this count. So I get that right over there. So something along these lines. Again, I don't have this. So I'm just proposing a potential roadmap here to get us out of the hole here. So I would pull back on that. Let me go to a 4-hour here. All right. Let's see how that lines up. Swing low, swing high. I didn't map that out in advance, right? That's just, you saw me put it together. That's exactly what we're looking for, right? That would be your, if we get the opportunity to buy there, that's one to be aggressive. Well, okay, so let's think of it this way. All right, so maybe if you're in here for the money, let's think of it this way. You'd want to, oh shit, let's see, get that right on there. All right. This is for the guy he hasn't thrown away his Lambo catalog yet. True Wave 3. All right. Let's reset that. I'm giving it a little cushion here, so allowing for a little volatility. I'm going to show you something here that I'm noticing in Bitcoin here. We'll get there in a second. But let me take that off. Okay, so you're a buyer here. Here, I'm going to put this on here to show you this to you guys. I thought I had it. Here, I can just use it here. I'm starting to see this more in Bitcoin. Well, I'm seeing it across multiple. I see it in crude as well, equally. And that's the 70.7, which I have highlighted here, which is, it's the square root of 50. So in the same way that 382 is the square root of 618, I'm seeing this more and more here. I mean, I think some algos have keyed in on that. So this is one to consider. So it's just the square root of 50. So if we're going to use the 382 as the square root of 618, it's not a bad idea to consider the 7.7. And there's a number of spots here where it's come into play. But I would just encourage that. So that's a reasonable spot to consider if you wanted to give it a little more room here because you didn't want to get shaken out by some volatility at the golden zone, you might give it the 7.7. So what is that giving you here? And because I've gone all the way up to the wave 3 target, right? So if we were to get that, there's 17.5 to 1. Yeah, you could, depending on your size there. No, maybe not a Lambo, but a hell of a nice Beamer, right? So there's plenty of opportunity there. And you want to be tighter on it. You don't want to give it that much room. There's 37 to 1. Again, you don't have to put $100,000 into that. It's all relative, right? So what's your risk tolerance? What's your capital base to work with, right? There is plenty of upside there. There's 37.5 to 1. So again, to not, if it's offered down here, to not jump on that. Again, you don't have to be sitting there with limit orders, right? But if it's down and it gets a reaction, it could come out of there fast, right? Just years of doing this. So a little reaction and the first retrace, nothing wrong with that, right? So don't feel like you have to be sitting down here if it touches the golden zone. You got to immediately buy it, right? Just because that's what many people will do. I've been laddering since the 50, right? So this is just a personal preference, right? How much risk tolerance you can accept, where are you putting your stop? Again, trader, believer, both. What are you? So something to think about. All right. So per that count, I think that's and again, nothing says we must get there, but you kind of step back and you go, if you had to bet where it was going to go, would this influence you at all? What do we do here? Right, wouldn't it be just like software to do that? Right, from 65 to 65. Wouldn't that influence your thinking just a little bit, considering how many times we've seen that? I swear to God, I bet it's over 3,000 times I've shown that as the pivot. Easily. Over 1,000 videos, 2 or 3 in every video. I guarantee I've shown that 3,000 times. What other technical tool can you think of that someone could demonstrate to you 3,000 times that caught the pivot, ultimately went to target? None. I know, because I've looked. There's nothing. So if you get the opportunity to buy down here, I sure would be paying attention. Right? I think it's reasonable to start buying right now. Right? Again, believer, trader, or both. So some things to think about, guys. Right? So one last thing here, because my members showed me this, and I had seen it, and we had a chuckle because I had been looking at the exact same thing. If we look at the trend channel here, it's awfully good, right? So you look at this channel, right, and we think about where we could be going here. So just the default channel, well, catches this pretty nicely. Now we'd be kind of look here and you go, well, wait, you're saying buy it right here. We're right in the middle of that channel. Well, yeah, I hear you. All right, but take a look at this. If we go to the fib channel, I've already got it on here. I'm just going to highlight it. I think I have it on here. Here's the fib channel. All right, so remember, all I'm doing is I'm just taking a measured move here, right? So this is all this is, right? So here's the measured move, and all I'm doing is applying that to the channel. Look what we do here. I mean, that is splitting the 618 and the 65 for that pivot. Could that be our pivot, right? I think that likely is a contender for the pivot of the 3. I mean, it can't get to, look what we do here. All right, so here we tag the 618, then we tag the 50, then we tag the golden zone. Remarkable. Just remarkable technical precision. So something to pay attention here. So it would be not unreasonable at all if we start to come out of here. Again, we're looking for the retrace into the 4 to the 5. Well, so here would be, this would be a technical orgasm. I'm sorry, I just got to say it that way. Okay, so here's this is the one I'm really hoping for, right? Just because it would just. Do you see what we get there, right? So you remember what we just drew up? Look at the intersection here. I'm assuming you guys can see this, right? If we get all of this right here, we're going to get this. Let me take that inside one out. All right, so here would be, I mean, just a TA big O right here. That would be trade. If that were the pivot before we go up, that's one that you print, you put on your wall, you show your grandkids. If we get that right there, which is what I think is exactly what we're going to get. Okay, guys, have a good weekend.